All right, so today we're diving deep into the world of Rabindranath Tagore. We've got a whole bunch of his short stories and like some background info on the guy. And honestly, I'm already kind of hooked and we haven't even started yet.
Yeah, Tagore is really interesting because he wasn't just a writer, he was super involved in everything going on around him, and you can definitely see that in his work.
Okay, so before we get lost in the stories, let's back up a sec. Who was this guy? The bio makes him sound like a serious Renaissance man.
Oh, totally. He was the youngest son in his family. His father was like a big deal, a religious leader. And Tagore got his education, well, partly at home and partly in England, but he ended up managing the family estates.
Really?
Yeah, and that's where he really connected with the people, the everyday lives of
Hmm.
people in rural Bengal. And that experience really got him fired up about social reform.
So he wasn't just some intellectual sitting in an ivory tower, huh?
Nope, not at all. He founded a school, was active in the Indian nationalist movement, even became friends with Gandhi. Yeah, and get this, he was knighted in 1915, but then he gave it up to protest British policies.
Man, what a story. But through it all, he was writing. And not just for fun. He became seriously successful, like both in Bengal and internationally.
Exactly. It's this whole mix of activism, spirituality, and artistic stuff that makes him so unique,
Right.
in world literature, I mean.
Okay, so how does all that life experience end up in the stories? You send over a great selection.
Well, each story kind of gives you a peek into different parts of what it means to be human, I guess. But that they're all connected by Tagore's empathy. Like he really gets his characters. There's this understanding of relationships and longing and trying to find meaning.
Let's start with the Kabuliwala. This one
Hmm.
really hit me because it's about this friendship. Well, not really the kind you'd expect. It's between a little girl in Calcutta and a fruit seller from Kabul.
Right. And what Tagore does so well is use the kid's point of view to kind of challenge us. Minnie, the little girl, doesn't see the Kabuliwala as some outsider. To her, he's just a friend.
It makes you think about how we put people in boxes. Like
Right.
when we decide who's us and who's them, it's like, are we born like that? Or do we learn it?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think it's something Tagore was wrestling with a lot in his writing. He's always looking at how society and our own experiences kind of shape how we see the world and each other.
So the Kabuliwala is about breaking down those walls then,
Yeah.
finding connections in the least likely places.
Yeah, I think so.
What about the postmaster? This one felt way different, like more, I don't know, internal.
Yeah, it's definitely more about being alone,
Hmm.
but also about those connections that don't last. This young postmaster, he's stuck in this tiny village and he connects with this orphan girl, Ratan.
His loneliness, it felt so real. Like, have you ever felt that isolated? Like you're the only person on your own little island.
Totally. I think everyone feels that way sometimes, at different points in life. But Tagore just gets it. And he uses the setting to the rainy season, how isolated the village is. It's like it reflects how the postmaster feels inside.
It's like the landscape becomes another character in the story, mirroring all those emotions. And then there's Rattan. Their relationship is so sweet, but it can't last. And you're left wondering, what happens to them after they go their separate ways, I mean.
Yeah, Tagore doesn't always wrap everything up in a neat little bow, does he? He leaves space for you to think about what could have been and how these encounters really stick with people.
Okay, you're ready for this one. The Child's Return. This one, oh man, it was a lot. Guilt, redemption, the power of love, loss.
It's definitely powerful. So there's this servant, Raicharan. He loses his master's child, and it's this awful accident, and the guilt just eats him up. He ends up raising his own son as if he was the child he lost.
That's just heartbreaking. The irony, I mean, he's trying to make up for what happened, but by doing that, he risks losing his own son's love. It makes you wonder, are his actions really selfless? Or is he just desperate for forgiveness?
Yeah, and it's such a complex portrait of this guy wrestling with all these huge feelings. Grief, guilt, responsibility. Tagore doesn't give you any easy answers. Instead, he makes you think about the choices Raicharan makes. Like, are they even the right choices?
Now, once there was a king, this one felt like a fairy tale, almost, a little different from the others.
Yeah, it is. And what's so cool about it is how Tagore uses it to explore imagination, that line between what's real and what's not, and even storytelling itself.
It's like he's talking about what he does,
Yeah.
reminding us that stories can take us to different places, make us question things, show us truths we might miss in everyday life.
Right, and by putting it as a story within a story, he's playing with the idea of different perspectives, like whose version do we believe, and how do our own biases affect how we understand what we read or hear.
Okay, hold on tight because Master Mashai is going to be a wild ride. We've got Venu, this young guy who's got everything. But he chucks it all to run off with a traveling theater group. Talk about a dramatic exit.
It's a story about wanting to be free, that pull of the unknown, but also what happens when you act without thinking. Venu's drawn to the excitement, the creative energy of the theater. It's the opposite of his sheltered, upper-class life.
But Tagore doesn't sugarcoat it, does he? He shows how hard it is to live that way. The challenges Venu faces and how he ends up disappointed.
Exactly. It's a coming-of-age story, sure, but one that says, hey, chasing your dreams, it's not always pretty. You might have to give stuff up along the way.
Now, Subhad, this one was so delicate, almost like a whisper compared to the others.
Yeah, definitely quieter, but no less powerful.
Right.
Suha is this girl who can't speak, and she finds peace in nature. And she forms this bond with a young man, or Pratap. He's, well, kind of a slacker, if you want to know the truth.
What struck me was how Tagore writes about Subha's silence. It's not a weakness, it's like where she gets her strength. It's how she connects with the world in her own way.
And Tagore, he's so good at showing her inner world through how he describes nature, the beauty, the peacefulness of it all. It reflects Subha's strength and how she finds peace within herself.
It makes you wonder, do we talk too much? Like, are we so busy filling the silence that we miss those deeper connections you can only find in quiet moments?
That's such a beautiful thought, and honestly, I think Tagore would love that. He was amazing at finding the deep stuff in the everyday, like those tiny details that tell us who we are, what we care about.
All right, so we're back and ready to kind of shift gears a little bit. We've talked about in Tagore's stories, like the big themes and ideas, but what about the how? Like, how does he actually pull it off? What
Yeah.
makes his writing so captivating?
Well, one thing that always grabs me is his use of language. I mean, it's just so lyrical, almost like poetry, even when he's talking about totally normal, everyday stuff.
Yeah, I totally see that. Like in The Postmaster, the way he describes those monsoon rains, it's not just weather. It's like this whole mood, this feeling of isolation that really reflects what the postmaster is going through.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really cool thing about Tagore's style, I think. This blend of realism and fantasy. He can make you believe in talking animals one minute and then totally break your heart with a story about, I don't know, a child laborer the next.
That's got to be a tough balance to strike. Like, how do you make readers buy into this magical world and still feel all those raw human emotions at the same time? Was there like one story where that blend of realism and fantasy really stood out to you?
Suha really comes to mind. On the surface, it's a pretty straightforward story, right? This girl who can't speak and her connection to nature. But there's this layer of magical realism underneath it all, especially in how Tagore describes Suha's interactions with the natural world. It's almost like nature becomes her language, a way to communicate and find peace.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It makes me think about how we sometimes get stuck with words, like words can't always express the things we really feel deep down.
Absolutely. It's like Tagore is saying there are other ways of knowing, other ways to communicate that go beyond just speaking.
Okay, so we've got this lyrical language, the realism mixed with fantasy. What else makes Tagore? Well, Tagore.
Oh, we can't forget how deeply connected he was to Indian culture and society. His stories really give you this window into a world that might be new to some readers, but the things he explores, family, tradition, social change, finding your place in the world, that stuff speaks to everyone.
Right. It's like he's taking these universal human experiences and grounding them in a specific time and place, giving us a glimpse into another culture while reminding us that we're all connected. We're all human.
And he does it all with such vivid imagery and symbolism. Take the Kabuliwala, for instance. Remember how Tagore uses pomegranates to symbolize the Kabuliwala's longing for his daughter back in Kabul?
Oh yeah, those juicy red seeds. They represent both being apart and being together at the same time. Such a simple image, but it carries so much weight, emotionally, I mean. It made me think about the things we all carry with us, the things that remind us of home, of people we love, of the past.
That's exactly the kind of reading Tagore wants you to do, And then in The Postmaster, those monsoon rains, they just keep coming and coming. It's like a metaphor for the postmaster's isolation and his longing for connection. Like the setting itself is reflecting his feelings.
It's like he's painting a picture with words,
Yeah.
Creating this whole atmosphere you can practically feel. Do you think that's part of why Tagore's work feels so timeless? Like why people still connect with it today?
Absolutely. He gets to the core of what it means to be human. Loneliness, longing, wanting to connect with someone. Those feelings don't go away no matter what time period you're in or where you're from. We might not live in colonial India, but we all know what it's like to feel like an outsider, to try to find where we fit in.
And his characters, too, even the ones who aren't the main focus, they feel so real, so fleshed out. You get a sense of who they are, why they do what they do, even their flaws.
He was so good at making you empathize with people, even the ones who make really bad choices. Like Raicharan in The Child's Return. I mean, what he does, basically kidnapping his own son to replace the one he lost, it's awful. But you get why he's so desperate. That guilt he carries is just crushing. You can't help but feel for him, even when you know what he did was wrong.
It was like he's showing us everything about what it means to be human, the good, the bad, the light, and the dark. It's not always pretty, but it always feels real, you know? Like he's not holding anything back. And it makes you think.
And speaking of making you think, let's talk about the social commentary that's woven through Tagore's work. It's subtle, but it's there. He wasn't just writing love stories and fairy tales. He was engaging with the real issues of his time.
Yeah, like in the Babus of Nyanjor. It's funny, for sure, but it's also a critique of the aristocracy, right?
Yeah.
And how they're fading away. But it's also about how dangerous it can be to cling to the past, to refuse to change with the times. Those babus, they're so stuck in their old ways that they can't see what's happening around them.
It's a cautionary tale for sure, but told with a sense of humor. And then in The Son of Rashmani, you see the effects of poverty and how hard it is to break out of that cycle, to move up in the world through education.
That one really got to me. Kalapata's determination to succeed, it's so inspiring.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of sad because you realize how many obstacles are in his way.
Tagore doesn't shy away from showing how hard life can be for people who are struggling, for people who are marginalized. But he also shows how strong they are, how much hope they have for a better future.
Okay, so we've got the beautiful language, the blend of real and fantastical, these characters that feel like real people, and this social commentary running through it all. Are we missing anything? I feel like we've only just scratched the surface here.
There's always more to discover with Tagore, but I think the main thing for our listener is to understand that his work goes way beyond just the plot or even the characters. It's about the bigger questions he's asking about human nature, about society, about how we fit into the world, you know.
He makes you think. He makes you question things you thought you knew. He makes you feel things you maybe weren't expecting to feel. And he does it so beautifully, so subtly. You get caught up in the story and then bam! He hits you with this profound insight that sticks with you long after you're done reading.
Exactly. And that's what great literature does, right? It stays with you. It changes how you think. It helps you see the world in new ways.
So as we wrap up this section, what's one thing you hope our listeners will take away? Something to keep in mind as they explore Tagore's work.
You know, I think the most important thing is to come to Tagore with an open mind, to be ready to be challenged. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to dig deeper, to think about how his stories connect to your own life and what you see happening in the world.
That's great advice. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to understand Tagore's work. That's the beauty of literature. It can mean different things to different people.
Exactly. So go out there and discover the magic of Tagore for yourselves. You might be surprised by what you find.
And that brings us to the end of this deep dive into the world of Rabindranath Tagore. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Until next time, happy reading.